All right, ready to go behind the scenes today. We're diving deep into a part of the business world most people don't even know exists, but it's a process that's essential to, well, pretty much everything.
It is, yeah, mobilization.
Hmm.
When a big project finally gets the go-ahead, the contracts are signed,
Hmm.
everyone's excited.
Yeah, champagne popping, everyone's high-fiving, that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mobilization is that critical but often overlooked phase where everything transitions from that we won the bid excitement to day one and, everything's running smoothly.
Smoothly being the key word, because I think we've all experienced those projects where smoothly wasn't really part of the plan.
Oh, absolutely.
So today, we're dissecting this whole process through the lens of Mobilization Mastery by Maxcene Crowe. She's a veteran in facilities management, over 27 years of hands-on experience, and she's packed all those hard-won insights into this book, into a really practical guide.
Yeah, and what's great is that she uses this really cool analogy in the book. She compares mobilization to a 400-meter race.
Okay, I love a good analogy. So break it down for me. How is it like a 400-meter race?
Well, it's not a sprint, right?
Okay.
It's not about getting to the finish line as fast as possible. It's about pacing, strategy, endurance. Think about it. A runner trains for months and months to prepare for a race. And just like that, a successful mobilization requires meticulous prep work long before that contract is even signed.
So it's about going beyond just, okay, we've got a plan, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
What are some of those training essentials, those crucial things that Maxine highlights?
Well, first, you've got to know who you're up against, right? Just like in a race, you have your contenders.
Right, scope out the competition.
Exactly. And in mobilization, this is what Maxine calls competition analysis. Knowing your competitors' strengths, their weaknesses, that's crucial. Lets you tailor your own strategy more effectively.
So it's not just about knowing the race, it's about knowing who you're racing against.
Exactly. And think about this. You'd never see a marathon runner wearing sprinting shoes, would you? They'd be in trouble pretty quickly.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. And it's the same in mobilization. You have to adapt your approach based on your clients, what Maxine calls their outsourcing generation.
Okay, outsourcing generation, this is a new one for me. Explain it like I'm a client hearing this for the first time.
Okay, so imagine you have different clients, right? They all have varying experience levels with outsourcing. Some are completely new to it, some maybe have been burned before, and others, well, they practically wrote the book on outsourcing.
Right, got it.
So this model, this outsourcing generation, it helps you tailor your approach based on their past experiences, their comfort level.
It makes sense, right? A client who's had a bad outsourcing experience, they're going to need more hand-holding, more reassurance than someone who's a seasoned pro at this.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's where building a good rapport becomes really crucial. Just like that runner and coach bond, you need to have those strong connections with your team and with your client. You need open communication, transparency, and trust. That's the foundation of any winning strategy.
So we're not just building projects, we're building relationships.
Absolutely.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Maxine herself, she's got a rather unexpected background. She was a competitive figure skater.
I know, right? You wouldn't think those two worlds would intersect.
Not at all.
But she actually argues that the skills she honed on the ice translate directly to mastering these often very complex mobilizations.
Really?
Yeah, it's all about discipline, laser focus, and being able to think on your feet under pressure.
Okay, so you're saying I need to be able to land a triple axel to nail my next project, because that's not happening.
Well, maybe not a triple axel,
Okay, good.
but there are some transferable skills at play here. She emphasizes breaking down, what might seem like daunting tasks into smaller, much more manageable steps. Like in figure skating, you don't just land a triple axel on your first try. You master those foundational elements first, you build confidence, and then you can take on the bigger challenge.
It's those incremental wins, proving to yourself and your team that you can nail the routine, but you do it one step at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't underestimate the value of repetition, practice. A figure skater, they'll practice those jumps countless times, refining, adapting their approach as they go. And in mobilization, you rehearse those processes, fine-tune your communication, and develop that agility to adapt on the fly. Because let's be honest, those unexpected hurdles are going to pop up.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And speaking of adapting, I noticed Maxine's book, it's peppered with these real-life anecdotes, what she calls tales from the trenches. So it's not all just theory and frameworks.
Yeah, I like those.
What are some that stood out to you?
Well, there's one called the Royal Oak. It's about her experience running a pub, of all things, and it really highlights the importance of having the right team.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. A pub and facilities management. Connect those dots for me.
So she and her husband, they decided to run this pub, the Royal Oak, right? While they were juggling other jobs, they were super passionate, had this whole vision, but they quickly realized that they weren't the right fit for every single role.
Ah, so even if you're totally gung-ho about something, which they clearly were about this pub, you still need the right people with the right expertise and the right positions for it to actually work. Passion's only going to take you so far, it sounds like.
Exactly, yeah. And she actually draws a direct link back to mobilization projects.
Yeah.
She says you need the best team for the job, and sometimes that means making some tough decisions about people you might really like personally.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle, right? You've got to find those pieces, the skills, the experience that fit together to create that winning picture, even if it means leaving some seemingly good pieces in the box.
Exactly. Another one that really stands out is called Somebody, Anybody, Nobody, and Someone Else. It's more of a cautionary tale, I'd say, about what happens when roles and responsibilities aren't crystal clear.
Oh, I have lived that one. It's amazing how quickly things can derail when nobody takes true ownership.
Oh, it's the worst. There's always that somebody
Yeah.
who had the great idea but didn't follow through.
Yeah.
Anybody who could have stepped up but didn't. Everybody assuming it was taken care of.
And inevitably, nobody actually did it, and then someone else is left to clean up the mess.
Exactly. And, in high-stakes projects like mobilizations, a missed deadline, even a small miscommunication, those can have some serious ripple effects.
For sure.
It just really underscores the absolute necessity of accountability. Everyone knowing their role, owning their responsibilities.
Yeah.
You can't just hope for the best on these things. And that's where Maxine's mobilization mastery framework comes in. It's like having a really good roadmap to navigate these complex projects. It's not about just winging it. It's about having a structured approach, a toolkit to set yourself up for success.
Okay, so let's break down this framework. What are those key milestones, those signposts on the road to mobilization mastery?
So she breaks it down into 5 really clear steps. The first one is called the icebreaker.
The icebreaker. Okay, so we're not talking like trust falls and team building exercises, are we?
No trust falls, thankfully. But it is about building that foundation of trust, being open and honest from the get-go. And that's both within your team, but also with your client.
So before we even get to those spreadsheets and Gantt charts, it's about really solidifying those human connections, establishing that we're all in this together for better or worse.
Absolutely. It sets the tone for that open communication, which, let's face it, you need that when you're navigating something as complex as mobilization. And then step 2, we move on to gap analysis.
Yeah.
So you're basically taking this magnifying glass to your project, and you're really looking for those areas where you can improve, those potential pitfalls.
So it's like a diagnostic checkup for your whole mobilization plan.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
Identifying what's working, what needs a little bit of a tune-up, and maybe where some of those hidden risks might be lurking.
Get ahead of them before they become a problem.
Exactly, yeah. And this is where step 3 is where the rubber really meets the road. It's called reprogramming. And this is all about taking those insights that you've gained during your gap analysis and implementing new habits, new practices, basically finding new ways of working.
So you're kind of hitting the reset button, rewiring your approach based on what you've learned? I like it.
Continuous improvement, always striving to make that process smoother, more efficient. And then step 4, this is where it gets really practical. And it's called the Mobilization Toolkit.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, so Maxine actually provides templates, resources, checklists, a treasure chest of tools to guide you through each phase.
So she's not just giving you the theory, she's giving you the actual blueprints to put it all into action.
Very cool. And for those who want to dive even deeper, she even has her Mobilization Mastery Academy online, where she offers, more in-depth training, support, and it's like having Maxine as your co-pilot throughout that whole mobilization journey.
That's fantastic.
And then finally, step 5, it's called embedding. And this is all about making sure that those newfound skills, those best practices, that they don't just disappear after the project's over. It's about integrating them into the very fabric of how your company operates.
So it's not just a one-off. It's about making mobilization mastery a core part of your company's DNA.
Exactly. It's about making it a sustainable approach, not just a one-hit wonder, right? What I really find compelling about Maxine's whole framework is this really nice blend of the practical, the hands-on tools, but also that human element. It's not just about ticking boxes on a checklist. It's about remembering that there are people involved in every step of this process.
Yeah.
Nurturing those relationships, adapting your approach to fit the, let's face it, ever-changing dynamics of a project.
And, it made me think back to the 400-meter race analogy. It's almost like each of these steps in the framework, they represent a different phase of training. You're building that endurance with the icebreaker, strategizing with gap analysis, then refining your technique with reprogramming, getting your gear ready with that toolkit, and ensuring, like you said, long-term fitness with embedding. It's
Yeah.
that holistic approach that lets you cross that finish line strong.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think that perfectly encapsulates the whole essence of mobilization mastery,
Yeah.
right? It's not just about getting to the finish line. It's about that preparation, the dedication, that spirit of collaboration, that drive to always be improving. That's what makes all the difference.
Now, for our listeners who might be thinking, okay, this mobilization stuff, it's interesting and all, but what's the big deal? Why should I care? Why is this so crucial in the grand scheme of things?
It's a question we should all ask ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. The buildings, the services, the infrastructure we rely on every single day, offices, hospitals, schools, airports, when these things are poorly managed, when that transition from the planning phase to actually being operational is bumpy, it impacts everyone.
For sure, it's those delays, the inefficiencies, miscommunications, that feeling of, well, this could have been done way better, and then that just ripples outward.
Yes, exactly. Successful mobilization, it's about making sure that these spaces, these vital services, they run smoothly, efficiently, that they actually serve their purpose effectively. And it's about creating a better experience for everyone who walks through those doors.
It's almost like, in a way, it's making the world just a slightly less chaotic place, one well-mobilized project at a time.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I am curious about this global aspect that Maxine touches on. I mean, she's worked with clients in over 40 countries. That's a lot of stamps on the passport.
That's impressive.
What are some of the unique challenges that come up when you're coordinating these really intricate projects across different cultures, different languages?
It's a really important point. And actually, Maxine, she dedicates a good portion of the book to this because it is so crucial. She really emphasizes the need for cultural sensitivity. What might be, standard practice in one country could be a complete faux pas in another.
Right, you've got to understand those unspoken rules, those cultural nuances to avoid making any accidental missteps. It's like, I always think of it like traveling to a new country, right? You learn the local customs.
Yeah,
You don't want to accidentally offend anybody.
exactly. And communication becomes even more paramount when you're dealing with these language barriers.
Or for sure.
Ensuring that there's absolute clarity in every single interaction is so important.
So it's about being really clear, concise with your messaging, maybe even factoring in a little bit of extra time for explanations, clarifications, just to make sure that everybody's truly on the same page.
Absolutely, and never underestimating the power of building trust, especially across those cultural differences. That might mean being adaptable in your own communication style, being extra transparent with your intentions, or even just taking that extra time to connect on a personal level, showing that you value and respect their perspective.
So it sounds like global mobilization, it's not just about project management expertise. You need a deep understanding of human psychology and cross-cultural communication. It's like diplomacy, but through the lens of facilities management.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's recognizing that what works in one context might not translate to another.
Right.
It's about being adaptable, that flexibility, and always having that willingness to learn and to adjust your approach based on that specific, cultural landscape that you're navigating.
Yeah, it really is amazing when you think about it that way. Like facilities management, on the surface, it seems so local. You're dealing with physical spaces, but it's really this whole interconnected web of global projects.
It is. It's fascinating, really. And I think that's one of the things that makes mobilization so interesting to unpack.
Yeah.
It's this, hidden force that's shaping the world around us in ways we don't even realize.
Totally. It's like the crew working behind the scenes on a movie set. You don't see them, but without them, the whole production would fall apart.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the whole concept of mobilization might seem a little abstract to some people listening, especially those who aren't, knee-deep in the world of facilities management every day. So can you give us some real-world examples? Like, what does successful mobilization actually look like in action?
Absolutely. Okay, imagine this. A company's moving into a brand new, state-of-the-art office building.
Okay.
Successful mobilization means everything is ready to go on day one, no hiccups.
We're talking computers are humming, the phones are working, the coffee machine is fully stocked.
The coffee, crucial.
Absolutely crucial.
But it's more than just making sure the lights work and the internet's connected, right?
Oh, for sure. It's about creating a space that's not just functional, but it's also welcoming, it's inspiring,
Yeah.
maybe even a little bit fun.
Yeah, it's about those little details. The layout, the lighting, even just like the artwork on the walls. All of that contributes to the experience people have in that space. And that can impact their productivity, their creativity, even just their overall well-being.
It's that feeling of walking through the door on day one and feeling energized,
Yeah.
not completely overwhelmed.
Exactly. Or think about like a hospital opening a brand new wing. Successful mobilization in that scenario means that all the medical equipment, it's not just installed, it's been rigorously tested. The staff is fully trained on the new systems, the procedures. Every single detail is in place to make sure that both patients and staff are safe and comfortable.
Right. It's about those life-saving procedures being implemented flawlessly on day one. There's no room for error. Exactly. And that's really where the true power of mobilization shines through, I think. It's that bridge between the blueprint
Yeah.
and the reality.
Yeah.
You're taking those plans, the contracts, and transforming them into this living, breathing space where people can actually thrive.
It's taking that potential and then shaping it into something real, something that's actually impactful.
Yes, and that impact, it extends far beyond just the physical space itself. It's about making sure those operations flow smoothly, optimizing resources, creating an environment where people feel supported, empowered to do their absolute best work, whatever that work may be.
It's about setting the stage for success, even if that stage is sometimes behind the scenes.
Often it's those stages, those behind-the-scenes ones, that make the biggest difference in the end.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into mobilization mastery, I have to ask about this term Maxine uses. I find it so interesting, a little bit ominous sounding, I have to admit. She talks about the mobilization iceberg.
Oh, yes, the mobilization iceberg.
So what's the story there?
It's a really powerful metaphor. It drives home the point that there's so much more to this whole field than what you just see on the surface. So picture an iceberg, right, floating in the ocean.
I'm picturing it.
You see the tip is gleaming above the water, but it's what's underneath the surface that really holds all the weight. And in mobilization, that tip of the iceberg, it represents those visible tasks, setting up equipment, training the staff, signing off on those final checklists. But below the surface, there's this whole other ecosystem of factors at play. And these are often overlooked, but they are crucial.
So what are some of those hidden elements, those things lurking beneath the surface of the mobilization iceberg?
Well, the human element, for one, it's about building trust, managing expectations, navigating those cultural differences like we talked about earlier, all while keeping those communication lines crystal clear. Those are the currents that can either lead a project to smooth sailing or they can run it aground.
And they seem like such simple things, right? But they can really make or break a project.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's the whole concept of generational outsourcing, which we touched on earlier. It's about remembering that every client comes to the table with their own history, their own maybe even baggage, some battle scars from past experiences with outsourcing. And understanding that history, that's key to building a strong, successful partnership.
It's like invisible luggage that everyone's bringing to the table.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, there's always the need for risk management. Having those contingency plans in place for when those inevitable curveballs come your way. And then just making sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed when it comes to the legal stuff, the regulatory requirements.
Right. Those are the ice flows that can really sink a project if you're not careful.
Exactly.
So the mobilization iceberg, it's a good reminder that what we see, that tip of the iceberg, it's just a tiny part of the story. It's about respecting the complexity of what's happening below the surface.
Yes, 100%. And that's what makes Maxine's framework, the mobilization mastery framework, so valuable. It's like having a map, not just of the iceberg itself, but the entire ocean around it.
I love that.
You've got the currents, the weather patterns, everything you need to navigate successfully.
So it's about being prepared for the whole journey, not just that moment at the summit when you're taking the photos.
Yes, appreciate the journey, because that's where the real mastery lies.
I love that. As we're surfacing from our deep dive into mobilization mastery here, what's the one big takeaway that you hope our listeners are walking away with today?
I think that big aha moment is realizing that mobilization, It's often hidden in plain sight.
Yeah,
But it's this invisible hand that shapes so much of our world.
right.
It's everything. It's the flow of your morning commute, the way a hospital
Good
runs.
smooth cup of coffee.
Exactly. And it's about appreciating those unsung heroes, the behind-the-scenes folks who make all of that happen.
It is. It's realizing that the next time you walk into a well-run office, a hospital that's just humming along, or like you said, enjoy a perfectly poured cup of coffee, there's a team of people who made sure that experience was as good as it could be.
It's the magic of mobilization.
It really is. And I love what you said about how this, it's not just about facilities management, these principles, this framework. It can be applied to so many different things, any field, any project, really, where collaboration, planning, and understanding that human element are key.
100%, yeah.
So to all our listeners out there, whether you're a seasoned project manager or just curious about this world, or you just, you appreciate a smoothly running system, take a page from Maxine's book. Think about how you can apply these principles, this mobilization mastery, to your own work, your own life. It might just unlock a whole new level of success. And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.